Friends, let's pray together our centering prayer.
Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, may your will be done through me.
You may take a seat, and as you do that, I want to tell you the story. About 125 years ago, a man named Jim came over from Chatham, Ontario, and he was in his late teens. He had barely two nickels to rub against each other, and he came to Detroit, and he started working at a railroad company. A guy named Alex Malcolmson owned a coal company. Thought, gosh, this guy works really hard, and he hired him to work for his coal company. He became a coal checker / bookkeeper. And what he would do is he would check the coal cars as they came in to make sure they had exactly how much coal on them they were supposed to have. Now, this guy was ambitious, he was hardworking, and he was also a bit odd. He would get up in the morning, way before everybody else, and he'd actually put a suit on to work in a coal yard. He would get there before everybody else, he'd stay there late. When he got his paycheck, he didn't spend it on cards, on drinks, or dancing. He saved it up. Everybody else in the boarding house where he lived made fun of him. Well, then one day, Mr. Malcolmson, who was quite a big wheel here in Detroit, was at his desk, and a man came in and he said, I have a business plan for you. My name is Henry Ford. And I'd like you to look at this business plan. I'm also looking for kind of an ambitious young bookkeeper who might help me. Do you have any recommendations? Who do you think Malcolmson recommended when it came time to fulfill that recommendation? This really hardworking coal checker who had spent his entire life preparing for that moment. The title of our message today, friends, is Trim Your Lamps. Because God is bringing opportunity across your path all the time. Will you recognize it? Will you be ready for it? Will you have enough for it? A number of you have come to church this morning, you've read the news, you've been out living your lives, and you've got good reason not to be hopeful. Your job's not going where it should. Kids are acting up. We look at the international news. We think, my gosh, where is hope? And you come to church among other people who feel the same way. But you also come to church with the God who is all about hope. The God we came to worship today created all the planets, solar systems, with just a word. Don't begin to think for a moment God can't handle what's on your heart. Don't think for a moment that the God who raised somebody from the dead is unable to meet you where you are. Friends, if the church is about anything, it's about hope. It's about realizing that God has not forgotten about you. God has not left the building. There have been many times when you've awakened thinking you're all alone. God says, I'm right here. I'm right by your side. Be prepared. Know that God hasn't forgotten. Trim your lamps. It is such a joy to be with you this morning, and I want to just take a moment to acknowledge Rabbi Starr, who's here. Would you wave your hand, Rabbi, next to the midst over there? And I'd like you to, you've got a couple friends there. Could they raise their hands also? I wonder if they might give us a hand and let us know they're here. And I want to tell you guys about a friend of mine who did something that you think came out of cartoon. And that is that he decided during COVID to build a boat in his basement. You know where this is going. He bought the wood, he sanded the wood, he cut the wood, he glued the wood, he nailed the wood. He did everything really well except measuring. And so, true story, what happened is when COVID ended, he tried to get it out the door and he couldn't. And he had to cut out another doorway to get his boat out. Very often in life, we get so obsessed with what's before us that we forget about what's ahead of us. Jesus told a story about this in the Gospels. He talked about two men who decided to build a house. One of them was down by the beach. He looked out and said, gosh, it'd be a perfect place for a house. All the sunsets over the lake, all of the dock is right nearby, all the crashing waves that put me to sleep at night. So he built his house there on the beach. The other man, of course, took a hike up to that granite mountain, built that house after digging out a cellar, digging out a basement, on the rock, on the granite rock of that mountain. And the storms came, and you know how the story goes. Because sitting there on that beach, watching that sunset, what could possibly go wrong? And yet it does. And yet it does. And I'm wondering in your life today, how obsessed and how much attention you're paying to what's in front of you versus what's ahead of you. Our gospel is all about making sure that we're awake, that we're wise, not foolish, and we're paying attention to the signs that are right in front of us. You know, as I recognized a rabbi a moment ago, I want to really thank him. And you know, the best part of his family isn't here. Rachel's not here. She can come later. Okay, his beautiful wife Rachel. Rachel works for the Hartman Institute. The Hartman Institute does some fabulous work in trying to bring peace and compassion to the world. And at one point, Rabbi and his wife invited me to go to the Jewish Federation at Maple and Telegraph, and they invited me to come and hear a speaker named Yossi Halegi. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but that's what my book says. And he gave me a book there. He was talking about his book, a wonderful book I highly recommend it, called Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor. And I'm looking at Judy because you always give me books. And Letters to My Palestinian Neighbor is a book about Halevi sitting in his apartment, which has a nice picture window and view of Palestine, and what letters he might write to his neighbor in Palestine. One of the things he says in this book that's really struck me, especially at this time, was he says that both Jews and Palestinians have the right to self-determination, and they have the right to self-definition. What does that mean? Well, shortly, you guys were with me a number of years ago when I was divorced. And after I was divorced, I went to see a therapist. And the therapist sat me down and said, I want you to tell you the story of your divorce, what led to this time. And I told him my story. He said, I've been a therapist for a long time, and you have a story about what led to this. Your ex-wife also has a story that led to this. More than likely, in my experience, those two stories won't match. So what I want you to do is not spend any time trying to convince the other person that your story is the right story. And I don't think it's productive for them to spend a lot of time to convince you that their story is the right story. You have the right to self-definition. What does it mean for us to know we have a story, to realize that the person we're trying to get along with may not have that story, and then have peace in between them? I want to ask you, as you're dealing with these situations in your life, how self-definition may help you get along with that family member, that friend, that neighbor, for whom there's now division. We're seeing a lot of division in our world today. And we ask, what can we do? I get calls about that. I get emails. What can I do about this? You can start at home by being a peacemaker. You can start at home with your families, with your friends, in your community, and sticking up for what you see as right. Our presiding bishop came out with a statement this week. You know, we're faced today with a gospel that talks about wisdom and talks about foolishness. The presiding bishop says, I've been meditating on love, and what love would do is ask for a ceasefire, is ask for weapons to be put down. What love would do is ask people to come to a negotiating table. What love would do is to take and embody self-definition as we go to that table. Presiding Bishop widely circulated that letter. You're free to read it. And I would invite you, in your worlds today, who is it that you are at odds with? A friend, a family member, a coworker. How can you begin making peace in your life? Because a peaceful community is made up of peaceful people. A peaceful nation is made up of peaceful communities. It is our job to be bearers of peace, to work through the complexities, to work through the difficulties that are before us. It's a very difficult situation, Rabbi. We're looking forward to hearing your insight and how we can support you and your congregation as you move through this tough time, because there are a lot of questions we all have. But we are here to follow love, to follow wisdom, to follow God into this unknown, complex future. And so from that story, I'd like to turn your attention toward bowling. Daryl, I woke you up over there. Our 300 almost bowler there. And I'd like to tell you a little story about a guy named Andrew Neuer. Now, Andrew Neuer, for those of you, any bowlers here, raise your hand if you're a bowler. We got a couple of bowlers here. And I got a bowling alley right here. This is a perfect bowling alley. right down here. If you never bowled before, the odds are to knock down those 10 pins. And if you're like me, very often you get 2 chances to do it. You'll throw the ball down, and you'll have 2 pins left, the 10 and 7 pin, right? The ones that are farthest apart that you never ever can knock down with just that one ball, okay? The pros do it exactly 1/2 of 1% of the time. And this guy, Andrew Neuer, did it recently. He became the 4th pro bowler to make the 10-7 split, to knock both of those pins over. And when he was done, somebody approached him and said, "Can I have your autograph?" He said, "Sure." And he said, "Another question for you. Boy, you sure are lucky." And Neuer said, "You know, it's funny. The more I practice, the luckier I get." Because when you foresee the situations that those 5 wise bridesmaids foresaw, you practice for it, you happy well. That's a message for us, friends, this morning. How well are we prepared for what's around us? How well are we prepared? Remember my opening line, God is bringing opportunities across your path all the time. Are you ready? Will you recognize them and get packed enough for it? How happy were you all to see the return of Father Steve Bangkok? This is a man, you know, you've heard that term rhino, right? Rhino means retired in name only, right? Okay. This guy is retired in name, in practice, in all aspects. He spent the last 2 months away from this parish, touring Germany, touring all kinds of Texas, I mean, all those beautiful hotspots. Father Steve likes to tell the story around this time of year. You've noticed you've got your pledge cards in front of you. Some of you put your pledges here. We'll be collecting these for the next couple of weeks. And Father Steve was serving at a parish where a particularly wealthy member decided he was going to pledge also. He turned in his pledge, and the rector went through the pledges, and he saw this very wealthy man didn't pledge very much. And so he called him up and said, "What gives?" And he said, "Well, you know, I'm a very wealthy man." The rector said, "I know you are." And he said, "The reason I'm wealthy is because I make good business decisions. And I look at what my money is going to get out when I put it in. What's my return going to be? And as soon as you can show me there's some return to your money, I'll be happy to pay." Well, I am here on this first day of our pledges, you guys, to tell you that your vestry and your leadership, we are a group of wise bridesmaids. We are looking over your money. We are going to spend it wisely. We're not going to just look at what's in front of us. We're going to look at what's ahead of us. And so I'm so excited today to be able to fulfill one of my longtime dreams. I've been with you 16 years. Of what I want to do with our congregation, and that is to set up the St. David's Legacy Society. Today, as you know, as we collect our pledges, we will be dedicating this plaque, which has the first dozen or so of you who have decided to make room for St. David's in your will. What this does is guarantee that generations that follow us will have a little bit in the bank so that they can go on and do your work. What are they doing? Well, how are they going to do your work? Hopefully the same way you guys are doing your work. You guys do your work in 3, I think, very important ways. First of all, we take your money, we spend it so that we can build community, right? There's got to be a community of believers who can come together, who can be themselves, who, when they go through difficult times like divorces, have a family that they can be with, who go through the death of a spouse, who want to baptize their kid, who go through confirmation. Every family is here, upholding one another, reminding ourselves of the good story. Secondly, of course, we're here as a community to help the community, right? We've got a food pantry out there. How many 12-step groups? I don't even know how many 12-step groups meet here. We have, parents of birth children. We have yoga groups. There are all kinds of people, because this is a place that we want to use, especially with that food pantry. 600-700 families a month come in and get food from us. That we're helping the community. When the mayor's over, I like to say, "Mayor, we pay our taxes." He said, "Well, I haven't seen it." And I said, "Mayor, I think that if a church or congregation is not giving back to its community at least as much as we would pay in taxes, we're not doing our job." And I'm very proud of this congregation. We've been doing it from way before I've been here. And of course, the third way we do this community is to change the community. We're having our next gun buyback. We're trying to just chip away at this horrible problem we as a society are experiencing with gun violence. New York Times was here this week. They took my picture, did a little interview here. This is stuff, last time we did one, we had a protester. I like to think Jesus had protesters too. But you gotta stand up and say the society's not working right. what can we do as a little parish to change that? So I'm very proud and very excited that that's where we're going, and that's what we're going to be doing here. I want to finish up, though, to tell you a little bit about my brother. I saw my brother yesterday, my younger brother, GM engineer, and he has prided himself on working behind the desk, and he looks like he spent his career behind the desk. So that when he said his daughter invited him to do a 5K, he said, I'll do it. And so your uncle, he got up, and about 4 months ago, he started running, getting ready for this race. When I saw him yesterday, I said, boy, how did you do? He said, I did great. This was my time. I said, oh my gosh, you did wonderfully. I said, how did you do it? And he said, every single day, I got up and I went running. I did not miss one day. I did not miss one length. I didn't cut it short. I went in and did it. Getting into the habit of running is not too different than the habits you and I are trying to get into, the habits of serving God. We heard that iconic reading that my daughter read for you in the first lesson. Me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yet if you're like me, there are times you're going to put down the gizmo, and turn off the TV, say your prayers, do the God thing that brings you closer to God. You are going to be able to run that race and do well in that race. Friends, every day God is bringing an opportunity across your path. Will you recognize it? Are you ready for it? Did you pack enough for it? Can you get an amen? Amen. As you please stand up and let us, Steve.